All eyes on the hand of one man. That man is Josh Allen, heading into week 2 for the Buffalo Bills. I'm Kevin Carroll. Welcome to Buffalo End Zone, everybody.
And I'm Andy Young. You are my right-hand man, Josh Allen. We're worried about his left hand right now.
And all hands on deck, Andy.
You got it. Big-time matchup this week.
That was the thing, Andy. Of course, a short work week. Josh Allen injuring his left non-throwing hand back in the win over the Cardinals on Sunday. Little media availability to start the week. Josh Allen cleared for practice, cleared for the game. But what everyone wanted to know was, would you get out there and see him on the practice field? How did he look? And we had our first chance of the week, a short week, to do that earlier in the day as we record this on the Tuesday leading up to Thursday's game.
Yeah, we got out to practice, and Josh Allen is wearing a white glove on his left hand. Of course, that's his non-throwing hand. That's the key here. But the white glove there looked like it had a little padding in it. Mm-hmm. And also it appeared that his middle finger and his index and his ring finger may have been taped together with a brace or just tape, something like that. So he was taking snaps from under center at times. He was taking shotgun snaps as well. Head coach Sean McDermott said on Monday that he didn't foresee any limitations as far as Allen being able to take snaps under center after practice on Tuesday. Allen said that, look, we're making it as comfortable as it can possibly be after he drove his own elbow into his hand on that diving touchdown against the Cardinals. And he said that, you know, he's worn a glove in the past in cold weather situations, so it's not completely foreign to him, but it's just a little extra help, I think, dealing with the issues that he's facing.
That was one of the things I was wondering, because I could not remember a game off the top of my head where he wore a glove, and I'm talking that perfect game against the Patriots in the playoffs. He did not have a glove on in that game, and that was super cold in that game. So part of me was actually wondering how he would adapt to that. A lot of quarterbacks wear gloves on their non-throwing hand, and maybe this just becomes a thing that he's more comfortable with. But you know, the first game to put a glove on after not wearing a glove down in Miami, Florida.
Could be thunderstorms, humid,
wet,
80 degrees.
Right. So
maybe it helps him in that regard.
Maybe it hurts them because all the wide receivers take their gloves off when it gets really rainy out like that.
That's true. That's true. You know, it's interesting because Josh is a player who runs around with the football so much, and from time to time he'll have it in his offhand, and he'll dive. Usually it's in his right, but
maybe it will help him. You see some of these catches some of these guys make with the gloves.
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is, Andy, I know nothing, and we'll have to wait and see what happens during the game.
I put out a video on X after practice just kind of illustrating him wearing the glove, and a lot of people said, all right, Tom Brady 2.0 is loading.
That game is the one that sticks out to me when Brady sliced his hand on someone's helmet during practice before the AFC Championship game, put the white glove on, and they had that hand bandaged up, and he played one of the better games of his career. So it's not unfounded that because the glove's on and you have some padding on that it's just going to be a disaster.
I'm not really concerned with it. If they were super concerned about it, he probably wouldn't be playing, right? It's just something he'll deal with, manage the pain a little bit, have the brace or the padding or the tape, the glove, just to make sure everything's okay. The good news is it's the offhand. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, you'll worry about the center exchange a little bit and how he holds onto the football, but I think he'll manage it and be okay. He said there's an old saying that it's a long way from the heart. Well, for him, it's a long way from the right hand, so we'll be okay.
Right. Connor McGovern talked to the media, too, while Josh was talking, and when asked about that center exchange and were they doing anything different or did it seem anything different, and he just said, yeah, there's a glove there now. So pretty simple. It sounds like it's a big nothing burger at this point, Andy.
For the Bills, for McDermott to come right out Monday after the game and say, we tested it again, whatever that was, x-rays, MRIs, physical tests, and to declare him right away,
yeah,
he's cleared to practice, he's cleared to play in the game, I think that's a pretty good sign, despite the precautions we're seeing.
A big sigh of relief, too, with what this game is. And, you know, yeah, it's week 2 of the season, but it's the Miami Dolphins. It's the one challenging the Bills right now for the top of the AFC East. And Allen's history against the Miami Dolphins, along with Sean McDermott there, is one of being able to win either in Buffalo or on the road. Even a couple of tough losses down in Miami were really close and could have went either way. So to have Allen cleared and good to go for this game, even on a short week, is just like a sigh of relief, because Mitch Trubisky had been dealing with injuries, so you don't know what you have behind him. And the short turnaround that he was cleared is just incredible to take on a Dolphins team that some say he's owned throughout his career.
Well, if you look back at the history, you don't have to be subjective about it. It's objectively, they have. The Bills under Sean McDermott are 13-2 against the Dolphins. Josh Allen is 11-2. That includes the playoffs. And they've won 4 straight. They have owned the Dolphins. It's just one of those matchups, for whatever reason, the Bills have their number, and sometimes that happens in the NFL. Sean McDermott, is kind of hesitant when asked about it, like, why have you been able to have so much success about the Miami Dolphins? And he said it's just one of those things. It's not. He doesn't get into the specifics about it, nor would you expect him to.
Right.
Some teams have numbers of teams. You look at the Bills, seems like the Bengals might have their number right now, or Kansas City in the postseason.
Right.
Not in the regular season, but in the postseason. So for whatever reason, they're able to disrupt Tua a little bit, and I think that messes up the timing, the way that the Bills play the defense. They tend to not let Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle completely go off against them and get deep behind them. And that has a little bit to do with the way the Bills philosophically play defense, more nickel, 2 high safeties, all those sorts of things. So they have had their number, and this is a critical game for this team, because we've talked ad nauseum about this difficult stretch to start the season for the Bills. If you go 2-0 out of the gates with a division win here, that's huge for what sets up to be a stretch of very difficult next few games.
Yeah, and we talked about the importance of at least getting that win over the Cardinals to start the season, which they did. Now you got the Dolphins coming up. You can look at both the Bills win and the Dolphins win and say they weren't dominant wins, either one of them. I mean, the Dolphins, I think they were behind for most of their game against the Jaguars and then pulled it out in the end. Didn't put up a ton of points. Tua had a lot of yardage. And the running game was not really that effective. We'll get to that in a bit. But it's still the Dolphins. They still have the speed. There still is this worry that maybe the Bills are going to have to get into a track meet with the Dolphins, and we're going to put up a lot of points, which seems rare on Thursday nights. But I might be thinking further back. Maybe Thursday nights aren't as bad now, but there is that possibility that they're going to have to keep putting up points throughout the evening.
The Bills and the Dolphins have the same amount of rest here, so that's not the issue. The Bills are traveling, so that is a little bit of a concern. It's going to be humid and hot down there. Luckily, it's at night.
Right.
Could be raining. Could be thunderstorms. So
By the way, I thought about that the other night. If we get in a weather delay like they did against the Chiefs a few years ago, I got a flight to catch on Friday morning, Andy. But I think that game went well into the night. I think that game ended close to 1 o'clock in the morning, which when you look at the forecast for that game with the Dolphins, you see thunder and lightning down there. But as I was assured, that's usually early evening showers down in the Miami area, and it goes away as the night goes on.
Yeah, I think the biggest key to this game is dealing with the team speed.
Yeah.
Like when you look at Tua and you look at him throwing to Jaylen Waddle and to Tyreek Hill, Sean McDermott said their team speed is something like he's never seen in the NFL before, and that goes back a couple of years now since Tua signed with that team, and it's been that way. It's just really tough to deal with. No matter how you try to simulate it in practice, no matter who you have out there on the scout team, no matter what kind of system you devise, at the end of the day, when a guy can just run away from the other guy, it makes it very, very difficult. So to me, that's the key is, are you able to get Tua off his timing? Because he's not like a Josh Allen who's going to scramble around and extend the play. That is a timing offense where Tua gets the ball out of his hands quickly and throws it to a spot, and those guys are usually there. So you got to get him off his spot somehow.
And big with Taron Johnson out and what the Bills are going to be dealing with their defensive backfield. And it still sticks out to me a few years ago when Damar Hamlin had to come in due to injury in that game where it was an afternoon game. Hamlin got burnt by Waddle like twice. One of them was a big play that turned that game around. Now Damar Hamlin's a starter. They have no Taron Johnson in there. Of course, we talked about Cam Lewis stepped in and played really well against the Cardinals. But, I mean, now you're looking at Waddle and Hill, and the Dolphins have other weapons too. But I think as we've seen in years past, the Bills' defensive scheme itself sets them up to generally not get burnt over the top.
Right. And so then that goes to the other part of this discussion that you started to bring up earlier. The Bills do tend to give up big plays in the run game, which Miami also likes to run the football. They're really good with speed in the running game and pounding the football at the same time as having all those playmakers on the outside. However, their two main backs, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert,
neither have practiced this week.
Yeah, so that's really an interesting development to see how that will play out on a short week with Thursday Night Football in a key division game. This isn't just, the Dolphins, they're playing the Cardinals or some random team from the NFC.
Right.
This is a game that probably will have some sort of implication as to seeding or playoffs or both down the stretch. So if the Bills were able to catch a break and not see either of those guys, that would be huge because Mostert has had his moments against them, and Achane really exploded a couple of times against them.
And when you look at their game against Jacksonville, Andy, even I think one of those two got injured towards the end of the game against Jacksonville, but 81 yards on the ground total, and I was looking at it earlier. A lot of guys had their hands on the ball in that. 81 for what the Dolphins are capable of doing at times isn't that impressive. But again, I was thinking of this driving in. It's hard to grasp after week one what exactly each team really is because of all the feeling out parts that you can't sit there and say, well, the Dolphins' run game is just gone. They're going to have to rely on the passing game and Tua and Hill. And I wouldn't read too much into just 81 yards, but it is interesting. Only 81 yards, and your two lead backs both haven't practiced over 2 days this week.
Yeah, and the other part of that game is I think Tua threw for like 340.
Right.
So, I mean, that takes some of the opportunities away, and they were having to play from behind, I think, in that game and come back to beat the Jaguars.
Yeah.
You don't want to go too far down the road of them not having those two guys. Yeah, that would be a loss, but if you look at people who play in the Shanahan-style offense, which Mike McDaniel is a disciple of, they can throw anybody in there. Look at Monday Night Football.
Right.
Christian McCaffrey for the 49ers is out, and they have another guy just go off for 150 yards.
It's amazing.
Against a good Jets defense. So that running attack can put almost anybody in it and succeed. So even if Achane and Mostert are out, one or both, they'll still have to deal with the Dolphins' rushing attack in one way or another.
Oh, absolutely. Did you see the body cam police stuff with Tyreek Hill? Of course, he got pulled over going into the Dolphins-Jaguars game. Didn't seem to affect him. Had a touchdown, I believe, in the game, Andy. I'm not trying to get sidetracked here, but it's incredible that twice in 1 year we have incidents where premier athletes get arrested on their way into the event that they're taking part of, playing in. Of course, Scotty Scheffler earlier at the PGA Championship. And then the body camera stuff for this, I just watched it before coming on, is pretty disgusting. And I mean, even if you have, like I have police officers in my family, I'm friends with guys I went to college with who are police officers. So you tend to be like, oh, I know these guys. They're not all bad, but this was just out of control from what I saw.
Yeah, it's just not a good look. The way that went down, it just seemed unnecessary.
Right.
Every bit of it.
From the top to banging on the guy's window.
Once you know it's Tyreek Hill, so what is he going to do?
Right.
Right? Like, there was no danger. There was no big issue. The guy was speeding.
Right.
Right? Is that necessary for speeding near the stadium?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But I did find funny that I saw later during the game after Tyreek scored, he put his hands behind his back,
Right.
and Jaylen Waddle fake handcuffed him.
Right.
So, again, you take it with a grain of salt and move on, but, that whole thing, we were talking about Tyreek Hill. I just watched the video. Just wanted to dive into that, and I don't think it has any effect in what is happening leading up to this Bills game at all.
I mean, he had a huge game.
Right.
Maybe he got all his anger out in that game. And now it's back to normal.
Sometimes you need that distraction. Maybe Scheffler played well right after getting arrested, but then tailed off as that tournament went on.
Yep.
So maybe the Bills catch that coming down part with Tyreek Hill. Bills wide receivers on their own, Andy. We don't have any, or the Bills don't have. We don't have. I've never said that in my life. Bills don't have the burner. They don't have that guy, but they've been preaching this spread the ball around thing, and they did it in the first game. Be interesting to see how that carries over to the second game, because there are players that you thought might get the ball more that did not, players that you thought might adjust, like rookie Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid. I think he was targeted twice, had one catch, or maybe just targeted once and had like a 10-yard catch for a first down. But then when you watch the playback of the game, the Cardinals were focused on Dalton Kincaid, but the Bills offense has to start doing stuff to get him more involved.
The Bills were really efficient, Josh Allen particularly offensively. I mean, 18 of 23, averaging 10 yards, 2 touchdowns, 137, 138 passer rating. And here's the key, and everybody eats has been the mantra all season. All offseason, you and I joked in the podcast right after the game that maybe it wasn't everybody eats, or maybe it wasn't everybody feasts, but everybody snacked at least.
Right.
Everybody had an appetizer in that game.
It's like a bucket of wings. Everyone had a couple of wings.
Right. I mean, Josh Allen threw to 10 different targets. 9 guys caught passes in that game. I mean, Keon Coleman led the way with 4 catches, 51 yards. Then you're talking about Shakir, Cook, Hollins, Knox. And you look all the way down at the bottom, and it's Dalton Kincaid. 1 catch, 11 yards. And we all sat here throughout the offseason and training camp and the preseason that Dalton Kincaid was going to have an absolute monster season, that this guy was going to go for 1,000 yards and be the next in the line of really productive tight ends, and that the offense in the passing game might work through Kincaid. Well, the Bills said it. They did a really good job of trying to take him away. I think that they heard all that, and they knew that going into this game. And if you looked, I saw some clips that people posted of the All-22 film. There were times when there were 3 and 4 and 5 guys bracketing Dalton Kincaid. And as Josh Allen said on Tuesday, okay, that happens. We want to get him the football, but if there's 2, 3, 4 guys surrounding Dalton Kincaid, that's got to mean somebody else is open, and I've got to find that person.
Right.
Josh did a pretty good darn job of that in the past game. You saw him kind of take what the defense was giving him. A lot of outlets to James Cook for productive yardage, scrambling, making things happen. I think if you're going to take a guy away like that, especially somebody who isn't a deep burner or anything like that, that's going to leave a lot of room for other people to operate.
And now you see what Shakir actually is, Keon Coleman deep down the field, Mac Hollins with the touchdown. Maybe teams look at that and aren't going to invest as much like the Cardinals did into locking up Kincaid so much, because Josh Allen and that offense and Joe Brady showed that if you're going to do that, and the whole goal of spreading the ball around is, without having Stephon Diggs here, we're not forcing balls into Dalton Kincaid because he's supposed to be the guy now in Buffalo. I just thought it was really interesting because I have Dalton Kincaid with over 1,000 yards receiving this year, and I'm off to a bad start. But all of that could change once you start putting stuff on tape.
Here's the encouraging part about that for Dalton Kincaid. No, the numbers weren't there. He was only targeted a couple of times and caught the one pass. But of all the skill position players, he had the most snaps.
Mm-hmm.
He was on the field 84% of the time. So that means when the Bills are running the ball, which they did a lot against the Cardinals, he's on the field. When they're throwing the ball, he's on the field. He had 52 offensive snaps. Keon Coleman, as far as pass catchers and backs go, was next with 45. Then it's James Cook dropping down to 38. So he was on the field significantly more than anybody else as far as pass catchers or potential pass catchers. Those numbers will be there. If that trend continues, they're going to find ways to open him up because then they're going to say, all right, we've got to take away James Cook, or we've got to take away Khalil Shakir, whatever that might be, or we just kind of play everybody straight up. And Joe Brady is going to have an opportunity to say, all right, look, here's how teams are trying to take him away. Let's scheme him open in other ways. Let's put him in motion. Let's do some other things. One thing offensively that I wanted to bring up a little bit was I think they didn't run as much play action as you thought you might see in that game. And I think that's often been a key to unlocking Josh Allen because when they run play action, he's really, really good.
Do you think that it kind of stays that way with his hand? I know play action, you're not really banging your hand up against anything, but I don't know. I think that hand will play a role in how this offense is going to set up at the end of the day. And maybe, Andy, you bring up James Cook. I was impressed with James Cook's game against the Cardinals, but then, you look at the stat line and stuff like that. He didn't get as many yards per carry as the brain told you while you were watching the game. But I still think that 1-2 punch with Ray Davis, I think that worked out great. Even maybe get Ray Davis out there a little bit more because when he was out there, he was very effective with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, James Cook only ended up with 3.7 yards per carry, but he had a lot more going on in the first half.
Right.
The problem was the Bills hardly had the ball in the first half.
Right.
In the second half, the carries weren't as productive. And, you'll have that. They're trying to
run the clock out.
Right. And they did a good job in that regard. So a lot of people don't want to hear that the Bills are going to be a running team. They think that's the wrong way to play football in 2024, that it's a passing league. That's how you score points and succeed. And I generally, as a principle, as an idea, agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need big, explosive plays in the passing game. That's the easier way to create points. It's the more efficient and effective way. However, the way defenses are playing teams now, a lot of teams jump into like a too-high shell, and they're saying, we're not going to let you beat us downfield. We're going to make that very difficult. Well, the answer to that, as more and more teams play that way and play nickel and play dime against top-tier quarterbacks, is to pound them with the running game.
Saw them do it against the Cowboys last year.
Right. I mean, so I think it's game to game. It depends. Trust me, you're going to have plenty of games where Josh Allen's throwing it all over the lot.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of what I like about this offense right now early in the season is that they seem like they have multiple ways to attack you if you're going to go a certain direction, one or the other. Whereas in years past, I mean, you remember when like Devin Singletary was the back and stuff like that.
We talked a ton every week. We would talk to McDermott about, do you need to get the run game going?
Right.
Why can't you get the run game going? And then last year, finally, they really solidified their offensive line, and they had their most productive running game they've had in a long time. James Cook was 4th or 5th in the league in rushing last season.
Yeah.
Now, ultimately, that doesn't always lead to wins. Sometimes it's an inverse property that, like, okay, the team that has gotten up in a big lead then can run the football. But it doesn't hurt you to be able to run the football, and especially the way things are going, both in terms of the schematics of defenses and what the Bills have this season.
Right.
They have 2 good tight ends. They have versatile receivers. They have a good offensive line. Maybe it's just a little bit of a different philosophy this season. While they get those receivers and Allen up to speed in the way they want to use them, you're going to run the ball and rely on that a little more.
What are the challenges, coming off of what we saw with the Cardinals? Now you have a Dolphins defense that you and I talked about going into the season, maybe improved on what they had last year and might pose more of a problem for this Bills offense on Thursday night. I don't know. I think it's early in the season. I always give the offense, no matter how good your defense is, the upper hand at this point in the season, just because everyone's still kind of feeling things out.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I still look at this as, with what the Bills have right now, should be able to move the ball on the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, they've got some changes this season in terms of both personnel and a new defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio.
Right.
Of course, no longer there. You bring in guys like Jordan Poyer to play safety now. So,
oh my God, I forgot about Jordan Poyer.
Yeah, we can get into that too.
Yeah.
But it's hard for the Bills to have an exact read on what they're doing because it's a new coordinator. It's some of the same people, but they had some turnover in terms of the pieces they have.
Yeah.
I still think Josh can move the ball. Still think Joe Brady can move the ball against the Dolphins defense. It's interesting to think about Jordan Poyer spending so much time with the Bills. He knows what they like to do defensively as well as what they like to do offensively.
Right.
How much of a factor that plays in. Guys go to other teams every year. Like, that's only so much of a factor that can be.
The old way you would view it is Jordan Poyer in with the offense and defense, tipping both coordinators on what the Bills might do here, what the Bills might do there.
Right.
I think there's so much change that's not a thing. I don't even know if it ever was, but.
And the other part that they lost Christian Wilkins, who was a very good player for them,
right,
at defensive tackle and did cause the Bills problems at times.
Yep.
So, I mean, David Long's a good linebacker. Of course, you deal with Jaylen Phillips, and Calais Campbell's a good player, but I think they can still do some things. Javon Holland's still there. He's a good safety. So, I mean, they present some challenges, but it's not like this is the 85 Bears here.
Stick on Poyer just for a minute longer. McDermott, of course, glowing when talking about what Jordan Poyer meant to the team. Cam Lewis, talking to the media after, says, Jordan Poyer's a great guy. He's the enemy now. They're asked, do you trash talk with him? No, not at all. Great while he's here. After we play, maybe we'll talk and, hug it out on the field, whoever wins. But, yeah, Jordan Poyer, as much as he meant to this team, is now in the aqua and orange. And, Andy, I was saying towards the end of last season, there were times where Jordan Poyer's age started showing. So while it's cool that the Dolphins have a former Bills star now in the back end of their defense, I still think that age started to show last year, and that might be an area that the Bills could take advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, if you think that he's going to struggle in coverage, that he doesn't have the step that he used to, maybe you do try to take advantage there. The Bills as an organization love Jordan Poyer.
Right.
I mean, he meant so much. When you think about this era, it started with Hyde and Poyer, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, those were two of the first free agent acquisitions prior to Brandon Beane even being there that Doug Whaley and Sean McDermott made when McDermott came on board in 2017. And they were heart and soul kind of guys. But it's business, time to move on. I'm sure he's friends with a bunch of the guys still, and, there might be some chirping and things like that, but
it's all in good fun.
They're professionals. They'll have fun out there.
I'm sure there'll be a moment where something happens.
I
mean, the whole thing, though, is
aside
from Dawson Knox and Shakir, Jordan Poyer has no connection to any of the other guys out running pass routes.
No, but he does to Josh Allen.
Oh, I know.
So you may see when Jordan Poyer's in the box playing that
right
sort of dime linebacker that he does as a strong safety, is there going to be a time when Josh scrambles and the two of them come together for a collision? Do you think Josh hurdles him or trucks him or slides?
He's going to slide. I feel like he's going to – you want to see him hurdle Jordan Poyer.
Now, does Poyer take a
picture.
shot, try to do his best to take a shot there?
Well, heck yeah.
Heck yeah.
Grab that hand a little tight as you try to bring him down. You know, give it a little extra squeeze, Andy. I would do that. Stevie Johnson would do it. Stevie Johnson tells us to play dirty on defense.
That was his big move that the Bills should make from Brandon Beane. Go down and tell those defensive players to play a little dirty. Play on the edge a little.
Play a little dirty. Who cares if you get a penalty? While we're talking about safety, Andy, with the injury and now with Cam Lewis in his new role right now, Cole Bishop, do you think it's time we see Cole Bishop maybe come out there in with the safeties, or do you think it's let's see how everything plays out with Hamlin and Rapp and
Mike Edwards
and you know, let Cole Bishop still kind of get up to speed, or do you think maybe we see the rookie at some point in this game?
I think given what is happening with Cam Lewis and that he's going to have to play nickel corner along with Jamarcus Ingram being able to play some cornerback too, I think they probably have to have Cole Bishop active for this game, right?
Yeah.
So whether he's ready or not, he's probably got to be able to be up for this game. I mean, he practiced all last week and he was out there today. You were on the defensive side of the field. He was good to go.
Yeah, he was good to go. Got some video of him. He looks right. We don't get to see much, but yeah, along with the other defensive backs and safeties and cornerbacks out there, he looks good to go.
Right. So to me, it's more of the mental part for him because he's just had so few reps throughout the offseason. You missed most of training camp with that injury. So is it ideal that he has to come in right away? Probably not, but it is what it is. And if he's your fourth safety and he backs up Hamlin, I think that's just what you have to do.
Special teams, Tyler Bass, Andy, coming off of how his season ended last year, connected on all his extra points and field goals in the win. But when it comes to special teams, there were issues, obviously, with the kicking game when the Cardinals return a kickoff for a touchdown. So special teams need to kind of tighten up as we move along here. But you head down to Miami. You've got to feel good that Tyler Bass seems like he's in a comfortable place. Need to tighten up that return game, though.
Definitely. Having Bass make a couple kicks, they weren't long, but it was important for him to be able to do that. He makes his extra
There was
points.
wind on the one in the fourth quarter.
Right. So it wasn't 50-plus or some 60-yard kick, but to have him go out there and make a couple of kicks was crucially important. You're right about that. And I think that McDermott's been confident in him. They didn't really have a choice because of his contract situation and where they were in the season in the preseason as things started to go poorly in practice. Still bears watching. You're right about the special teams aspect in the return game, though. Now, they get a nice return from Brandon Codrington to start that game, but then you go down and take the lead, and you give up a 96-yard kickoff return, and you also kicked one out of bounds, as you mentioned. That's got to be better. You got to clean that up because more often than not, a play like that is a game-breaking play.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't come back to haunt the Bills, but, for example, say Kyler Murray is able to flip that ball down the field and somebody miraculously comes down with the ball and they go in for a touchdown and you're going,
you lose by one.
Right. Oh, well, that's because we gave up a kickoff return right after we took the lead. You can't have that. And so they'll work that out, I think. To me, the juice ain't worth the squeeze, man. Boot that crap out of the back of the end zone and move on.
I'm starting to get there with you. It's
especially in a situation like that.
Correct. I think it's cool as fans, neutral fans watching a game to see the returns be a lot. But I think teams, as it goes on and games mean more and are tighter, will just be like, kick it out of the end zone. We can't risk it.
Right.
And I think eventually, as you get near November, that's what we're going to start seeing a ton of.
And you might find that certain teams figure it out better than other teams. I mean, every year there's teams that are better in kick return coverage than other teams. For whether that's scheme, the players they have, whatever it might be, where the ball placement is from their kicker. So maybe throughout this process with the new dynamic kickoff, you'll find teams that their kicker's better at kicking those line drives and making it difficult on the return man. Their team is better at breaking through the blocking schemes, that sort of thing. So teams might find that it benefits them to try to pin a team deep as opposed to kicking it through the end zone.
It's weird. The Bills, I think, during the preseason just kicked it through the end zone every time they kicked off. And I was not expecting them to do anything else during this game, but there you have it.
They gave it a trial run.
Yeah, well, Bills, Dolphins, bet MGM I go to, Andy. Dolphins, -1.5 going into this game on Thursday night. Sounds about right.
And I've actually seen the line move towards the Dolphins. I've seen 2.5 now.
Really?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right?
Miami's at home.
Yeah.
You figure they're going to be favored.
Think about how few times we've seen the Bills be underdogs. And I think 4 of the first 6 games or even more, they're underdogs going into these games. Different mindset for these teams.
Good for the Bills. I think Josh Allen kind of likes that.
But that's about right. Field goal-ish or less. For sure.
Dolphins at home, over under 50 points. Thursday night game,
Andy. You like the under. I like the over here. I think on a short week, the way these teams are set up defensively, I don't think either team is amazing defensively. I think it sets up to have a lot of points. Allen and the Bills usually put up a ton of points against them, and you know that the Dolphins can. I mean, couldn't you see a 28-24 game? No.
Yeah, no, you're pulling me in the other direction.
Don't let me do that.
No, but I think when the Thursday night football games were first being played, you had a lot of duds on Thursday night football. I don't think you have over the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, think about the Thursday night opener. That was awesome.
Right. So you're right. I don't see either one of them under 25 points in this game.
I mean, you could certainly see a 24-21 or something like that, but my suspicion is it's more like you've seen some 32-29s, things like that. I would say for my final score, because I know you're going to ask me that, I like Bills 28-24.
All right, I'm with that. I think the Bills are going to lose this one.
Okay.
Why? I think Josh Allen's hand might play a role in this game, and it's going to limit some of the stuff the Bills would have done otherwise. Dolphins with the home field advantage. I just think that the Dolphins, I thought, came along a little bit more over the weekend against the Jaguars, and the Bills had some plays where they let the Cardinals back in it, and I don't know how the Cardinals are going to end up being at the end of the year, but if the Bills do what they did against the Cardinals, the Dolphins are probably going to run away with the game. So I'm going to put the Dolphins in the mid to upper 30s, around 38 or something like that, and have the Bills right around 32-ish.
That's a ton of points.
I went 70. The other way. I told you.
Yeah, I mean, one thing concerning to me would be Dorian Williams and how he gets used in misdirections and things like that. And then can he get back in coverage? Can the Bills linebackers get coverage? And is there miscommunication? Are there issues with Taylor Rapp and the angles he takes when you see those crossing routes with Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle? Right. So there is some concern there. That makes me think that the Dolphins can score in this game. I also just think that the Bills will be able to score just as much, and you're going to be in a shootout, and I'll give it to the Bills.
Maybe it'll end up being a good game and a close game and come down to the very end.
It'll be fun.
But we'll go with that. You go with the Bills. I'll go with the Dolphins
for
week 2 of the season. Bills end up at 1-1 on the year. You got them at 2-0. Let's do a little 3-and-out. Andy, the Jets at the 49ers did not impress me too much from the limited part I saw of the game. You and I talked about who could challenge the Bills. I said the Dolphins. You said the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still where you were at the beginning of the season, or did you look at the first game of the season and be like, maybe the Jets aren't exactly what we thought they were?
I was not impressed by what the Jets did at all.
Yeah.
Now, we saw them early go down and score right away, and that was an impressive drive. But Rodgers looks like he can't move like he used to, and so he's still going to be able to throw darts.
Right.
But if you can get in his face and knock him off that and disrupt the timing, I think that's going to be problematic. I wonder if the Jets are going to be able to sustain their protection for him. And then on the other side of the ball, like San Francisco's really good, and they beat up a lot of teams, but I was surprised that Jets defense was just picked apart and hammered the way they were.
And that's where I am on it. Like, that defense, I was expecting a lot more of.
And it's one game.
Right.
And San Francisco's really good. Like,
that's true, too.
They're a Super Bowl favorite in the NFC again, probably for a reason.
Yeah.
But I expected a much more competitive effort by the Jets on both sides of the ball.
So do you still think that they'll
give me a month?
I'll give you a month.
Check in
That's
in a month.
Fine. Okay. Open weekend for us, Andy, with the Bills playing on Thursday Night Football. I'm off to South Carolina to golf in what looks like downpour, rain constantly for 2 days, then fly back to get back. Bills and the Buffalo Sabres start getting training camp underway next week. But it's interesting how this season started, how you go to Labor Day weekend, I go up golfing with my dad and the rest of my family. He gets mad when I don't mention him on the podcast. So great golf with my dad, brothers, mother, and everyone else.
Hi, Mr. Carroll.
Yes. But then a nice little caveat that the Bills play Sunday, Thursday, and then don't play till Monday night. Gives you a little extra time off. So I'm out. Peace out. I'm going golfing down in the Carolinas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to enjoy this Miami trip because I've never been.
Yeah.
So the idea, even though it's supposed to thunderstorm at times, which happens at any point in Florida in the fall.
Yep.
Hopefully we get to the beach a little bit prior to the game on Thursday, and then we fly right back early Friday morning. And then, yeah, I've got 3 or 4 days off after that, spend some time with the kiddos. My dad's in the middle of trying to move, so I might go down and help him a little bit.
All right.
So, nice little Saturday, right?
The season fires off with 2 quick games, and then it kind of goes back to neutral for a little bit. James Earl Jones passing away. Andy, of course, known primarily as Darth Vader's voice for the Star Wars franchise, was doing it, all the way up until recently with some of the stuff that Disney Plus has pumped out. But I was amazed looking at some of the other movies that he was in that I forgot about. I mean, you have Star Wars, Field of Dreams. If you ask me what my favorite movie of his is, it's that movie. I grew up in a time where you didn't have all this stuff to watch. Field of Dreams was one of my favorite movies. I would watch it when baseball season started, probably at least 3 times a week on the old VHS.
You wore that out, right?
Loved Kevin Costner in it. One of those movies where I know most of the words and get asked to shut up as the movie goes.
Did you have VHS or like beta back in the day? Because I know some people had beta.
We had VHS.
Okay.
From what I remember, beta came out first.
Yes.
VHS was cheaper.
Right.
So everyone started to go to VHS. And then there were like laser discs that came out that looked cool, but VHS stood the test of time for a long time. I think I had a VCR when I moved out here in 2001. I still had one of those college boy TV VCR combos for my bedroom with a regular TV VCR in the living room.
Hook up the PlayStation to it.
Absolutely, man.
Or were you PlayStation or Xbox guy?
I rotated, depended on what I had, but I mean,
sorry,
Sega Genesis is what I grew up playing with, the old Madden and NHL hockey. But
speaking of James Earl Jones and Sega Genesis, The Lion King was a great video game on Sega Genesis.
It was a great video game?
Yeah. Disney came out with some bangers back in the day. So, Super Nintendo.
And Super Nintendo baseball was good. But, Andy, The Sandlot. Sometimes it gets lost
I love the
on
Sandlot.
his role in the Sandlot.
Yeah, and then, like the autographs from Babe Ruth and all
Right.
these guys, and then the twist at the end that he was there, right?
Right.
And played with him, super cool.
So that was a cool one. Here's a movie that is like a 90s, late 80s movie, Best of the Best. Had Eric Roberts in it.
I don't know that one.
It was a martial arts movie about a group of Americans, and he was the coach that were training for this big martial arts contest. I can't remember where it was, but Chris Penn was in it. There are a lot of actors in it that you would know, but I forget that James Earl Jones was in that one. And then I can't forget, and you probably have never heard of the Star Wars Christmas special, have you?
No.
It literally is the worst thing ever on TV, but Star Wars was trying to just get out there in every form. Luke Skywalker was in it. It was between Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, but it was basically Chewbacca and the Wookiees version of Christmas, and Darth Vader and the Empire were going to spoil it, and that was the first time you saw Boba Fett, but he was a cartoon that the Wookiees were watching on. It was just really bad. I just remember at the end, Han Solo blasts a stormtrooper off of a front porch or something.
I just completely zoned out through what you were talking about because I am not a Star Wars guy at all.
No, that's fine.
I know. But yeah, James Earl Jones was awesome. I mean, his Mufasa, the CNN voice.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, so, I mean, sad news to hear that he passed for sure.
Yeah. Great run, though. Great
Yeah.
life, great run.
Darth Vader. I mean, how more iconic can you be than that?
And as my wife pointed out, actors like this, they last forever now because we can still watch everything they've ever done.
Mhm.
So, all right. So, Andy probably still hasn't watched the Wyatt Earp special, which is fine because I've moved on from it too. And we actually have a football game on Thursday night to get ready for. Post-game show after Stevie Johnson. Maybe he joins us a half an hour in this time, maybe 20 minutes. I don't know. Former Bills wide receiver set to be with us. Andy will be down in Florida. That comes your way immediately after the final whistle between the Dolphins and the Bills. And then we'll wrap it up with a podcast after the show.
Yeah, do us a favor, like, comment, and subscribe, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, or listening to us on any of the number of places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those things where you watch and listen.
Enjoy the game, everybody. We'll see you afterwards.